of different models, and I call those cloud service models, which we're going to look at now. The most common one, and the one that's been around probably the longest in our industry, is what is often referred to as the public cloud. These are services or applications and services that are offered through external providers or cloud service providers that are offered to large demographic groups or industry sectors or general people in the general public, for example. So there will be a variety of customers all using the same services and the same applications. It differs slightly from the first model that we looked at, which was software as a service, although that can be included as a public cloud service, where the relationship is that it's more offered to a very large group demographically or a large industry sector group. It's often the utility computing cost model that we talked about earlier, like transactional-based, volume-based, metered usage, etc. So that's sort of public cloud, as it were. We might be able to think about something like mobile services as a public cloud offering, where you have a multitude of customers from different industry sectors all using the same mobile network, as an example. So that could be an example analogous to the public cloud. So that's one model, and it's the one that we're probably most familiar with. The second is what we call private cloud. Now, to me, private cloud is probably just a fancy name for a managed service, although today we seem to want to call everything that's run over a network something quote-unquote cloud. But what the private cloud model is about is emulating private networks. So it may operate in more of a public cloud infrastructure. However, there's segregated space which is strictly for a particular customer with a specific need and probably specific services and applications that go along with that. What's different and what's probably most notable about this model is that the customer actually pays for the infrastructure and the support. This is different from the public cloud model, where you pay for the transactions, or you pay for the volume, or you pay for the space, or the particular services that you're using, and only what you need. In this case, the customer tends to fund all of it. So I guess I would probably argue about how cloudy that actually is. This also, in this model, requires more customer hands-on management. It's usually focused, because of its cost, towards specialized services for special need customers. It's secure to the customer organization, so no one else has access to that. It often comes with a lower return on investment, so it costs more to operate and the ROI is less. And it also involves capital expenditure and operational expenditure that other cloud models don't. So this is usually reserved for specific customers. And really what it is more of a virtual private network, as it were. But it's becoming a common buzzword in the industry, so I thought perhaps we should cover that as well. The third model, and this is actually becoming much more popular, which is really taking advantage of a lot of the best of both, as it were. And this is what the industry is calling the hybrid cloud. So this model has features of both public and private. So customers, for example, there can be one or many, may have some private cloud infrastructure for highly secure or specialized service needs that they still want to be run over a network and managed externally, offered externally, hosted externally by a provider. But they may also want to make use in terms of more corporately shared requirements or shared with other organizations, services that are available in the more public cloud architecture. So the hybrid has features of both. This is often used by internal IT departments to provide service to business customers. They leverage the use of the public cloud model with a lower capital expenditure and a lower operational expenditure, lower staffing needs, etc., but also have the ability to offer that specialization when it's needed. So hybrid clouds are becoming much more popular. And I think one of the reasons for that is that while there is less overhead in using an external private cloud architecture, it comes with a little bit of complexity. But because of the global workforce environment that we're in, this is often a model of choice by many organizations because they can make use of both the private secure one-to-one relationship with external cloud providers and the more public version for certain service needs that they have. So those are the three kind of models that we see most commonly talked about today with respect to cloud computing. So I want to look now a little at the benefits of cloud computing. So why is everybody doing this, or why are some people doing it? Not everyone is just yet. You know, what is it that's drawing us? Well, I think the first thing is that cloud computing is considered by the IT industry to be one of the mega trends of the future. And I think that in and of itself tends to be why it gets as much interest as it does, because there is some things that are new, but there are also some things that really aren't new about cloud computing. But aside from that, cloud computing does offer some really tangible and significant incentives for organizations today. The first of those, at least the one that gets the highest level of attention from the CIO audience, is cost avoidance and cost reduction. Cloud computing models can offer organizations reductions in the area of support costs because there's a lower operational expenditure. Some tiered services like Tier 2 and 3 support are often external and so cost less over the total life of the service to operate. The big one, I think, for most companies is the absence of needing capital investment to host and manage services. That's a big drawing card for cloud computing at the moment. So the cost reduction comes in the areas of support, capital investment, and the ability to tune your demand needs by having pay-per-use. So that's one of the primary benefits we see. Another benefit is the global access because of the fact that we really have a very global and mobile workforce. Cloud computing plays into meeting that service need extremely well because all you need is an internet connection to access all of the services in your organization. So that's another very strong benefit that companies are attracted to when they think about investing and moving into the cloud space. It offers multiple connectivity options. So for example, you don't necessarily have to have a desktop or a laptop to connect and access the services you need. Today you can do it using all kinds of mobile devices, cell phones, iPads, you name it. So that's another flexibility option within global access that's an attractive benefit for many companies who are considering cloud computing. And it's device independent. So because all you need is an internet connection, whatever device you have that can do that can give you access to some or all of the services you're used to having right in your office. So that's, you know, probably another major benefit that we see with cloud computing. I think one that's becoming notably more important to companies is the ability to control demand and capacity. Cloud computing offers today, now that we've got some different service models, dynamic scaling. So if you have unpredictable business needs, if you have very fluctuating needs in terms of capacity and demand for storage, for network access, for transaction volumes, etc., cloud computing offers that quite readily. It's easily available in the marketplace today. It's priced very competitively, and it offers the business and the IT organization much more control over how much cost, when, at the right time, you know, fit for purpose and fit for use. It also provides good historical trending activity over business demand and patterns of usage. And this is something that IT service management and IT in general has struggled with getting a good handle on in the past. Cloud computing is sophisticated enough now that you can get a lot of good analytical information about how services are actually being used in your organization, what the demand and capacity trending is, and then you can make some strategic decisions much more accurately. So this is another strong driver and one of the benefits that cloud computing offers. So that's helpful for business and service planning. So those are some of the major benefits that we see with cloud computing. And of course there are others, and if you talk to different cloud providers, I'm sure they have lists as long as my both arms on additional benefits. But these are the main ones that we think of. These are the ones that we know are proven. We're getting more and more evidence every day in the industry that there is benefit in doing this with the right fit. And that's what's driving a lot of the trends towards companies moving and using cloud computing today. But, and there's always a but, are there trade-offs? And there are. And I think that this is one of the more important areas that organizations who have not yet moved into cloud computing or who are new to cloud computing really need to think about when they decide whether one or all of their services should be delivered using one of the cloud models. Because we're talking about using third-party services, we're talking about using third-party platforms and infrastructure and applications and so on. Some of the trade-offs that we see come in the form of less flexibility, for example. If you look at a public cloud model, for example, you'll find often that you'll be offered certain threshold limits, for example, or certain service level options, for example. And within a range of service level options, you have to choose what it is you're going to pay for and what it is you're going to have in terms of your service levels. So in the cloud computing environment, there tends to be more rigidity and less flexibility to the consumer. Now that isn't always a bad thing. So a trade-off doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. And of course, every organization has to look at the benefits and advantages and disadvantages to them before making a decision. But I think that we have a tendency ourselves to overemphasize our uniqueness or overstate our unique needs and overstate our unique service level options. So sometimes this can be a good thing. This can change the culture and in the organization, especially with the customer, the business customer, the end user, in terms of what they really actually need to have excellent service quality, rather than going above and beyond and paying more for more than what they really need to. So this is a trade-off. It is a reality, but it can also be a positive influencing fact on customer and consumer culture. So you need to think about that. One of the things that it can do is expose the business to additional risks and external threats. Because you are moving your information, your services, etc., to third parties, there is always an additional outside risk. Now, some would argue that that risk exists internally as well, and it does to some degree, but there does tend to, overall, if you're looking across the industry en masse, that tend to have a slightly higher risk exposure. So some companies respond to this by using cloud providers for things that are perhaps less business critical or have a lower security requirement, etc. Often this is the way people will enter into a cloud environment, is to look at those kinds of services which have the ability to absorb a greater risk exposure. So that's often a good way to start, especially if we're talking